Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the post-Bodo Glimt pod. I'm Marcus Buckland, alongside George Sessions from the Press Association and Tom Barclay from The Sun, who is in the Arctic Circle. So too actually is the other Tom Allnut, but he has gone back to his favourite library, which apparently is just across the road from the ground. He was telling us about it during the post-Wolves pod, so he's reading up ahead of the Leeds game. He's a very industrious fellow. But we have a lot to ponder. It was another, well, frankly, dispiriting first 45 minutes. The resilience was very evident again in the last 20 or so. And Tom, I want to start with you because you are there. You were asking some very good questions of Mr. Frank afterwards. But, these recurring themes are a worry, aren't they? The fact that Spurs seem to be lacking a lot of structure, a lot of cohesion, unable to get into games for long periods and having to come and do something pretty special towards the end. What was your take on the overall performance tonight?
Yeah, hi Marcus. It sort of depends on your perspective, I guess, how glass half full and half empty you are, really. But I don't think you can redress up most of this performance. It felt quite, if not worrying, then just the struggle they had Spurs today to really impose themselves on a Bodo team who haven't actually lost many games of late. I think they've won defeat the last 16 games, but they are, as I saw the BBC describe them afterwards, minnows in this competition. It's the first time they've been in the Champions League, and I think with the quality that Spurs have got at their disposal, even if they've got a few players missing and they obviously made a few changes tonight, I think we still should have expected better than they offered up. I mean, I'm not saying everyone was expecting them to definitely win the game. But it's just the way they really struggled to impose themselves for most of the match. It felt like they were almost asking for Bodo to really come onto them for most of the game, and it was no surprise when they finally took the lead. If anything, Spurs were lucky it hadn't happened earlier. Obviously, there was the penalty, but there were other chances too, and it was no less than Glimt deserved, really. I suppose you can focus on that resilience factor, the fact they came back again. But my concern really is we're at this early stage in the season. Obviously, the early stage of the Thomas Frank tenure. So one might argue that he's still getting his ideas across, particularly in the attacking part of the team, and hopefully that'll get better. But as the season goes on, when the fixtures really start to pile up, how easy is it to do that? Really, to start having more of a free-flowing approach. And I can't help but thinking back to the Antonio Conte season where he eventually left. But the start of that season, Spurs were actually unbeaten for quite a long part of that, the start of that season until they lost with 2 last-minute goals at Sporting Lisbon. But at that point, we weren't that surprised. We were almost thinking this was coming. And I feel like we're a bit there at the moment with Spurs. These performances, on the whole, aren't really convincing. And how easy will it be to really sort of step it up a gear once the campaign really kicks on? But from and games come as thick and fast as they already are at this stage. But I suppose you shouldn't lose sight of the fact that they managed to dig themselves out of a hole tonight, and they have to take a lot of positives from that perspective.
Yeah, but as you rightly said, they're not going to keep digging themselves out of holes if they keep falling into them. George, I know you're interested in the actual team selection, the fact that, a couple of the big names, Kudus on the bench, Xavi on the bench again. I'll come on to Xavi again a little later because when he did come on, he had 1 or 2 problems once again. And no Romero, of course. And Thomas Frank afterwards was trying to explain his tactical approach, how they were, they knew they were going to have to soak up some pressure, but they were going to look to try and push forward at the right times. Just didn't seem to work. Did he get his starting 11 wrong?
This is my issue with Thomas Frank at the minute, and I don't want to be too harsh on him, but I think he keeps getting the team wrong. I really do. I said it a couple of pods ago that the Wolves at home, you can't start Bentancur and Palhinha. I'm sorry, and I said that to Thomas Frank on Saturday, and he countered and said when Bentancur went off that Tottenham lost structure, and that's true. But if you start Xavi in the middle, Bergval, Palhinha, you control the game. You're not going to lose structure chasing the game towards because you should already be in front because you're creating chances. And if I'm totally honest, I think he underestimated Bodo tonight. I really do. Who have Tottenham's two best players been this season? Mohammed Kudus, Joao Palhinha. Why are they not starting in the Champions League away to a difficult team? Bodo are Champions League newbies, but we all know how good their record is. They've won so many home games, and it was, Tottenham fans were all fearful 3-1 up going into the second leg, thinking we were going to lose 3-0. I think he underestimated them. I don't think he knew or he realised how good they were going to be. And I also think that with the sort of preparation and not training on the artificial pitch was a bit of a red flag for me. Everyone slagged off Angie's lack of tactics. Well, he prepared on that pitch. He'd played there before with Celtic. When Tottenham went there in May, they trained on the pitch. Thomas Frank didn't do that. And, we saw how many slice clearances from Ricario, poor passes out from the back. I don't think he got the team right at all today, Thomas Frank. If anything, this is the game to play Joao Palhinha and Rodrigo Bentancur, not to be dropping Bentancur and not to be dropping Palhinha. And if you're going to sit back and play counter-attacking football, you need Mohammed Kudus. So no, I wasn't happy with the team at all, to be honest.
There's an irony about that statement, though, George, about you feeling like Thomas Frank underestimated Bodo Glimt, because in the pre-match press conference, in the post-match one, he was almost falling over himself to praise Bodo and come out with all these stats about how strong they were, what they can do. So I don't know. It seems hard to sort of stack up the two between him, the idea that he's underestimated them when he seems so well aware of their strengths, but
why drop Kudus? Kudus got rested against Doncaster. It makes no sense. That's why I think he looked at Leeds on Saturday and thought, yeah, we need Kudus 90 minutes away at Leeds, and I don't like that. He talks himself about take it one game at a time, focus on the next game. This Bodo game was massive. If Spurs win this game, they've got 6 points. It's probably going to be about 15, 16 to get to the top 8. Spurs are already almost halfway there. And now you look at the rest of the fixtures and you wonder, okay, they're going to be able to get to there. So I know you mean, Tommy, he was lavish in praise, wasn't he, pre-match and post-match. But I think his actions kind of suggested otherwise.
I think...
Sorry, I was just saying, Marcus, actions clearly are more important than words. And you're right. I think what tonight showed is how important Kudus is. I mean, he's not just... And for the reason the thing that I keep coming back to with him, it's not so much the way he can drop a shoulder and create a chance. That is fantastic. He's really good at that. It's the way he holds on to the ball. They're so lacking of a player to do that while Solanke is out, because Richarlison isn't able to do it well enough, really, on a consistent basis. Like he, as we've said before, he is capable of some brilliant technical goals, like we saw against Burnley. Albeit it doesn't happen every week. You can't really hang your hat on that every week anyway. But they're sort of firing up long, particularly tonight, to him, and he can't hold the ball up well enough. He's just not physically as much of a presence as Solanke is. But with Kudus, he can do that. He can hold on to the ball. He's so strong. He dribbles into positions where he can get the rest of the team up. And without him there, because Johnson can't do that in the way that Kudus can, they kept losing it. It kept coming back at them. So I definitely agree with you. It's just I was more pointing out the irony of how much it felt like at pains to express how strong they were. Because in the pre-match press conference, I'd said, look, I realised that you won't want to go back too much to past seasons, and you obviously weren't even the manager then when Spurs came here last time. But it really was very recent. And it was a very effective win that Ange got out here. Have you looked at it? And he did say they had, but he didn't really want to sort of go down the route of like, here's the sort of blueprint of how to win or even focus on that. And he spent most of that answer just talking up Bodo's strengths. So he would definitely push back on that. But you're right, George. It's a classic case of your actions are more important than what you actually say. And I can see why Spurs fans are particularly frustrated by the starting lineup today.
Well, listen, the starting lineup is one thing. I also agree that Bodo are really good at home, actually, and maybe we underestimated just how well Spurs played in that semi-final last season, because prior to that, I think they'd won something like 10 or 11 games in a row at home. And, it was an artificial pitch. It's a very tight little stadium. So, maybe there's a degree of understanding there as to why Spurs weren't as good as we expected them to be. But, and George, I agree with you with the starting 11 as well. It's really, really strange. But irrespective of that, when I look at Vicario, Porro, Danso, Van der Ven, Spence, Bergvall, Bentancur, Sarr, Johnson, Richarlison and Odobert, I am still expecting a lot more than I saw in the first 45 minutes. And I'm afraid you've touched upon him. Look, I like Richarlison. He's staying fit, which is great. But honestly, from the moment he made a complete mess of that early opportunity, the cross from Bergvall, and George told me before we came on tonight that he had a total of 10 touches. And I'm sorry, but none of them are probably totally ineffective. To me, there's no way he's going to score enough goals to make Spurs a real force this season. And I've also got to say that when Simmons came on, I was surprised that he didn't start the match as well. But, he had a really poor game against Wolves. I thought that he lacked confidence again tonight. He shied out of one tackle. He gave the ball away in a key moment again. These for me are even bigger concerns, irrespective of the starting 11 guys. I mean, you thought that Richarlison would be a regular for as long as Solanke was out. And that, now we hear he's had an operation as well. So what was a minor niggle has now resulted in going under the surgeon's knife. But these are growing concerns for me. Am I panicking too soon about Xavi, and am I being too harsh about Richarlison?
I don't. Let's start with Richarlison. So first of all, with Solanke, he's definitely out of the Leeds game. I think the hope is that he may be back after the international break. We'll see, and obviously all Spurs fans will listen to that and go, yeah, okay, we'll believe it when we see it after what we've seen so far with Solanke and obviously other injuries last season under Ange. But I've already made the case of why I feel like he was massively missed tonight, has been in recent weeks. Richarlison, I mean, first of all, that chance with Bergvall, it was brilliant play from Bergvall, winning the ball, driving forward. He showed his pace, which is something that I did an interview with his old coach recently. One of the things he pointed out was how much quicker than he.
I think
how much quicker
I think
he
that
is.
Tom there. I'm going to pick it up in true Richarlison fashion. Try and finish it off, but I'll probably miss.
You will.
Yeah, that was kind of that sums up Richarlison. I think, unfortunately, brilliant play from Bergvall, as Tom alluded to, and he just isn't anticipating the missed clearances from the defender. And there was another one very similar like that. I think it might have been against Doncaster, maybe. The ball got cut back and he just wasn't sort of quite anticipating it, like you see the best strikers do. And you mentioned it, Marcus. 10 touches is, I know forwards in the modern era don't touch the ball loads and they're not involved, a huge amount. But that's such a small number for somebody that you at least expect to hold the ball up kind of 5-6 times in a half, let alone in a whole game. And actually, I did have a look back to see, is that usual for Richarlison to have kind of so few touches, or is that a bit out of the ordinary? And in fairness, against Brighton, he had 44 touches.
44? Bloody hell.
Yeah, 44. He had 23 against Villarreal and 20 against Wolves. So maybe that's kind of his rough ballpark. But 10 tonight just shows you how kind of anonymous he was and how isolated he was. That is an issue for Thomas Frank. He hasn't got a forward that's keeping hold of the ball or sort of taking the chances when they're coming their way. So I feel for him in that sense.
Yeah, I hope my internet connection holds up here. I know it's been a bit of a problem, but I sort of made this point the other day. I just feel like, I don't know if this is the longest run that Richarlison's been fit for since he's been at Tottenham, if you add in the pre-season friendlies. But I think what we're seeing throughout this sample size is he's not top quality, is he? He's a good player on his day. He can produce fantastic moments. He's not someone you can hang your hat on if you're going for titles. Forget about the Premier League title, but I mean cup competitions. I think you need more than that. He's not a bad. He's a good squad player, but if Spurs are really sort of laser focused on winning things, they're going to struggle with relying on him up front. I think we've seen that over the last few games.
Yeah, I would agree. Now, listen, we're going to take a quick break here, depending on whether you're listening to us or watching us, etc., etc. When we come back, I want to talk about the defence, which, of course, Thomas Frank has really been working strongly upon, and Spurs haven't conceded too many goals, but the stats tonight in terms of Bodo's attacking endeavours are quite frightening. And we'll also look ahead to the Leeds game and the fact that it's the last game before an international break. And we know what happens to Spurs in the last game before an international break, so don't go away. Guys, 18 shots Bodo Glimt had on target. 18 shots, only 4 on target, fortunately. I mean, they really did waste some golden opportunities, not least the penalty. And, you know, we've talked about the problem with Richarlison and team selection, but I'm just wondering why Spurs were so porous at the back. And that's a little bit of an awkward pun because Porro, who was really good going forward again and obviously assisted with one of the goals, but you know, I just felt that he in particular, we know that he's a little bit vulnerable defensively, but his attacking instincts often more than make up for that. But you know, Spurs were being ripped apart. Okay, by a decent team. We've discussed their strengths and the pitch and all the rest of it. But you know, George, this is Frank's main aim, to make Spurs as tight and as hard to break down as possible. And the pure stats suggest he's working because we're not conceding too many goals. But we've already made the point. You know, if we'd led in 4 or 5 tonight, it really wouldn't have reflected, you know, too favourably on Bodo. They were that good, I felt, or at least they created that many chances, and Spurs were that bad. What was it?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And is it too simplistic to say it's Palhinha? You know, what was it? The Villarreal game, he was on the bench, wasn't he? And they sort of ran through it a couple of times. And I think Tom Allnut said it on the last pod about Bentancur, you know, wonderful footballer, but he just doesn't take control of a game like you want. And I'm not sure he is quite good enough to be the number 6 to kind of keep it locked in. Lucas Bergvall's, you know, fantastic talent, so is Pape Sarr, but they're both young still. And I think actually already Joao Palhinha is just undroppable, isn't he? I personally feel like now he needs to be playing every game for Spurs to look kind of in the right structure and compact and look sort of an experienced, mature team. Because, you know, he was speaking after the Wolves game about the lack of kind of calmness on the ball, especially when they were chasing the game. And we saw that, didn't we, with sloppy pass? You know, Jed Spence, there was for the second goal, just kind of, you know, flicking it away when actually if someone talks to him, he probably could have controlled it and passed it down the line. And yeah, I mean, the chances that they gave up, you know, and look, the thing is, people are going to talk about resilience and character. And I understand why, because Spurs are 2-0 down and they've come back to draw 2-2. But let's be honest, you know, for 65 minutes, they were rubbish against a team that they beat 5-1 4 months ago. You know, we can talk about resilience and character, or should we just say that they shouldn't be so passive in the first place? And they should have lost it actually in the 95th, 96th, 7th minute, whatever it was, when a Bodo substitute, you know, Ollie Didrik Bloomberg, you know, turned in the box and fired. Well, he probably should have scored that. And then we're not talking about character and resilience. So, you know, and Tom mentioned right at the start of this, it does remind me a bit of Antonio Conte. You know, how many poor first halves did we see under Conte? Spurs would be behind, and then they'd fight back, and they'd win the game or get a draw, and we'd talk about great character and great resilience. But actually, don't be so passive in the first place. If you dictate the game and you try and get the goal and you try and get another goal, then you're not needing to fight back and show character and resilience. So I know that's going to kind of be the buzzword from this game, and I understand why. But I just think it goes back to that kind of intent. And you know, Thomas Frank spoke about being brave in his first ever press conference and wants his team to, you know, always take the brave option and be brave on the ball. And I don't think Spurs are at the minute. They're really not enough people are showing for the ball. Not enough people are getting into the box. Not enough people are making the runs. And it is early days. I'm not going to be too harsh on him, but it is a concern going into October that we're still not seeing the kind of attacking intent that we want, other than, say, the Brighton game.
Yeah, that's very fair, I would say. And Bodo could have had 4 or 5. Obviously, Spurs scored 2. They had 1 disallowed. I mean, it was the correct decision. I think Van der Ven was clearly tugging at the shirt as Bentancur scored. Odegaard also hit the upright. Did he do enough for you guys to feel as though he could become a regular partaker of big games? this season? Tom, I know your internet's coming and going, but I can see you back.
I hope I'm back for the duration, but we'll see. Nah, not for me. I thought he was okay. He obviously got into that opportunity towards the end, had a few moments, but this is the kind of game where he gets that opportunity to start, and I want to see more from him. He's had the odd glimpse, the way he set up that own goal, which, by the way, is now Spurs' top scorer this season. For the goal against Doncaster, showed his sort of twinkle toe feet when he's playing well. But again, it's against Doncaster. He had some moments against Brighton, but I can see why a lot of fans aren't expecting massive things. He's again very young, and Thomas Frank, at least publicly, is when we've asked about him and Matisse Tel, because it seems like not just the fact that they're both French and 20 years old, it seems a similar situation for both of them, where the jury seems to be quite out on them. He seems to be publicly backing them, saying they're going to be very, very good players. But I don't think he sort of massively took his chance. It's more the fact that the team were pretty poor all round that you wouldn't single him out as the sort of weaker member of the team. There are others that have struggled more. I sort of dipped in and out earlier when you talk about Porro. I thought defensively he had one of his worst games for Tottenham tonight. And, Jens Petter Hauge, who scored two fantastic goals, but he made it look very easy against Pedro Porro, who's been a really good defender, I think, in the last, and particularly this season, and for a while now, given where he was at before Postecoglou took over and how much we thought he could never play right back. He's come on leaps and bounds. It was a poor performance from his perspective. I just wanted to mention, you talk about Bentancur. So today we wrote a story. There's a few of the other guys written a story today about how we're of the understanding that a new contract is basically on it seems very close now. He's very close to agreeing a new deal. And I saw a few people respond to my tweet earlier about saying with that story, almost saying, no, thank you. And I think that's pretty strong. I mean, I think he's a very good player, but there is that sort of frustration level with Bentancur at the moment, isn't there, for Spurs fans? I think it comes back to, the whole point that Tom made the other day, which he referenced a second ago, is we know what a good player he is. Why can't he do it more often? Why can't he take a game by the scruff of his neck? Is it the tactics? Is it just him personally? Is there more to it? I don't understand why he can't do more of it, because as good a player as Bergvall is, he's only 19 and we're already seeing him, in Frank's words, sort of drag the team forward. I know they're slightly different players positionally wise. Now Bergvall's very much a number 10, and I'm not saying Bentancur can play that way, but I just again tonight was expecting more. I know he can do better, and it's frustrating watching him in that way.
I've got one theory. I don't know if there's anything to it, but he's obviously had so many injury problems of late. I just wonder if he's lacking a little bit of confidence, and there's just a sixth sense that makes him feel, okay, look, I'm going to do what I can do here, and I like to boss around and I float across the pitch and all the rest of it, but I don't want to get hurt. I don't know. Do you think that's maybe in the back of his mind?
I don't know. Maybe when you've been through the injury problems he's had, ACLs, the ACL that he had, maybe. But then think to last season, how many times he put his body on the line. He was knocked out a couple of times, wasn't he? I don't think you can really, apart from what you're saying now, I don't think that's ever been an accusation that was pretty fair to level at him. I don't know what it is with Bentancur. You look at Palhinha the other day after the Wolves game, you hear him speak and how much he's clearly a winner, and he just wasn't impressed by what the whole team produced, and it wasn't good enough. And I love the way he spoke after that game. And he so quickly established himself as one of these undroppables that when he's not in the team, like he was tonight, it's very notable. But personally, I think Bentancur is a better player technically. He's a better footballer than Palhinha if you're talking about the technical side of the game. I mean, that's dismissing all the other side of the game, which are equally important, in which Palhinha is better, obviously tackling, but maybe just mentality. I don't know what it is really, but he is frustrating. Maybe there's a reason with a player who's got that much talent why he's not playing for Real Madrid. Maybe that's the one thing that's lacking. But I do feel like, but put it this way, in a more positive way, this is, I think, unlocking Bentancur's potential even at age 28 could be the key for Thomas Frank for making this team really click going forward.
Well, he
See,
obviously likes
I
him.
was just going to jump in and say, having seen Archie Gray come on again tonight and burst forward and be the one that actually makes the equaliser, having also played pretty well, I personally thought the other night. I wonder if Archie Gray, I'm putting a lot of pressure on a 19-year-old kid, and Tom, you'll probably remember this. Remember his performance for Leeds at Chelsea a few years back in the FA Cup? I think he was 17, then he played the number 8, and he just absolutely run the midfield. And he was bombing forward, he was linking up play, and I've just seen little glimpses from him, I think, over the last month that, I'd be very surprised if Thomas Frank goes into a big game and plays Bergvall, Gray and Palhinha because it's very young. But I do wonder as the season wears on if Archie Gray is going to maybe put his hand up more and actually kind of, almost jump ahead of the queue with Bentancur. If he doesn't up his level as the person that can actually be a box-to-box midfielder, can play balls through the lines, can make tackles. We know Archie Gray can do that. And I guess looking ahead to Leeds, it really wouldn't surprise me if actually Archie Gray starts at Leeds. I think Thomas Frank's kind of man management during these early weeks, starting Tell at West Ham when he'd just been dropped from the Champions League squad, starting Archie Gray against Burnley after a difficult cameo against PSG. I could see that being an opportunity for Thomas Frank to kind of, again, give Archie an opportunity in midfield. And I'm intrigued. I'm really intrigued by Archie in midfield after these sort of recent performances I've seen, and especially with Bentancur just kind of being a bit meh, really. I'd like to see Archie really put his hand up and force his way in because he's got so much talent. We just haven't seen a lot of it in midfield.
I
Well,
think
let's look
there's
ahead to. Sorry, Tom. I was going to say let's look ahead to the Leeds game. I was just going to wrap up with the European situation. 4 points from 2 games. Okay, 2 pretty underwhelming performances, but it's actually a decent position to be in. Next game is in Monaco in 3 weeks' time, so we can park that for a little bit. And now we go to Leeds, TB, knowing that we always lose just before an international break. So fascinating to see the 11 that he goes for, and I'll come to George in a moment. And I need to check with George in terms of his prediction for last week because he was on a roll, but I'm suspecting he did not say 1-1. I didn't hear what he said before the Wolves game. But in terms of, first of all, how big a focus is there going to be from you guys when you go and see Mr. Frank before the Leeds game in terms of why Spurs keep losing before the international break and what he's going to do in particular to make sure that doesn't happen this time?
Well, I would say it's a fairer question now than it would have been last international break because he hadn't had one at that point. Now at least he's had a small taste of this horrendous record that Spurs seem to have, of which most of it is not under his watch. So it seems a bit unfair still to ask the question, but at least he's had, like I say, one experience of it. I don't know. It's such a strange thing that's going on to the point where you have to sort of question where it comes from because it's largely the same group of players in the last couple of years that keep having this thing happen. It is a weird one. I mean, Leeds, I've only actually watched live once this season at Arsenal. They got taken apart 5-0. But overall, their performances and their results have been pretty good for a team that's just been promoted. Very good, really, for a team that's been promoted under a manager where I think most neutrals have sort of thought Daniel Farke is, most people think is a championship manager. How long will he last? There was already talk in the summer, literally after he just won promotion, of them changing the manager at that point. But I think he's surprised some people with the way they've gone about things so far this season. And there's a spirit there that's carried them a long way. And even Calvert-Lewin's already had a good start, having joined on a free transfer. So it's obviously not going to be easy. And I've done so many games at Ellen Road over the years that to know what that crowd can be like and what a hostile environment it may well be for Spurs. But just back to George's point about Archie Gray, I mean, I agree there's an opportunity there with Bentancur not exactly nailing down that position. But one thing you're sort of overlooking in that is surely Xavi Simons long term is playing number 10. I mean, I know I asked Frank after the game the other day, do you not think he's ready in the Premier League to play there yet? And so maybe there's an adjustment period. But I look at him and I just think that's his position. So that obviously takes, if that is to be the case, then that takes one out of 3 away. Palhinha has to play. We're not talking about Sarr yet. So I hope that Archie gets a chance, but I don't know where it kind of happens to a certain extent. with the level of competition.
Well, I hope he plays on Saturday. It makes sense. George, I know you love to try and predict the starting 11. And I'm thinking, bearing in mind how pedestrian Richarlison was tonight, and we know that Solanke's out, and I mean, God knows when we're going to see Colomwani. Your theory, which I like, let's play Johnson down the middle at Leeds on Saturday. Might that happen?
I sort of want Johnson to play off Richarlison. That's kind of the way I see him maybe thriving, or probably not Richarlison actually, because he's not going to hold the ball, but probably Solanke in actual fact. I mean, it'd be great if Randall Colomwani could be fit. God, I think somebody said to me he'd only missed one game or two games in his whole career. Then he comes to Spurs and he's already missed three.
He walked into the Tottenham medical room and that was it.
That is Dr. Tottenham, isn't it? Yeah, no, it'd be an interesting team actually. I've seen Leeds once this season at Fulham, and they were so unlucky to lose. Actually, they were really, really good defensively. So, I'm sort of predicting I'm going to sort of jinx a 5-0 Tottenham win now, but I think Spurs will struggle to break them down in open play on Saturday. So they're going to need a little bit of creativity, and yeah, Tom's right. We want to see Xavi in the 10 role, don't we? So that would make a lot of sense. But I don't know. I just get the feeling that Thomas Frank doesn't really trust him there yet. That just seems surely tonight really would have been Bodo away, play him, play Palhinha, play Bentancur. I thought that would have probably been the midfield actually. But he just doesn't seem to want to play him there. He's played him there against Doncaster in the Carabao Cup. It's very different going Leeds away. So I wonder if Xavi's kind of stuck out on the left again, maybe at Ellen Road. But I'd imagine Palhinha will definitely come in. Kudus will definitely come in. And it will be tough for Spurs, but really after the Wolves draw, I feel like they need to now go there and win. What would it be? Sort of, if they don't win, it would be 5 games and 1 win. It is early days, but I just feel like for the sort of momentum and the kind of the belief, and look, to be fair, Thomas Frank's been brilliant in the away games by and large. Great win at Man City, great win at West Ham. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Spurs go there and get a result and put in the type of performance that we've sort of come accustomed to with Thomas Frank on the road. And I guess further down the line, we want to start seeing winning home games. But it feels like a sort of a big game for Thomas Frank. I think go there, get a win, and then we're not sort of so bothered about these last 2 draws. We feel like we're back on the upward curve.
Well, also because we made the point at the start of the season that, okay, Wolves are better than their league position would suggest. Bournemouth are a really good team, and Leeds, as you rightly say, Tom, have started much better than I think we expected. But there's some much tougher fixtures to come, so it would be nice to get the points. And just going back to Xavi, the way he's playing at the moment, Tom, and the fact that he's lacking a little bit of confidence, surely it would make sense to play him in his favourite position to try and get some of that confidence back. And he has said he wants to be a number 10. So I'm thinking if you are going to start him on Saturday, don't whack him out on the left again. Give him a chance to show what he can do in his preferred position.
Yeah, I think part of the issue is that he doesn't really seem to fancy anyone so far wide left. So with not being completely convinced by or giving Xavi this time to sort of adapt, that makes sense to play him with, particularly when he trusts more of his central midfielders at the moment. And that we'll see. We'll see how Odegaard develops in this first half of the season. We'll see Johnson on the left. But if none of them really convinced by January, then you'll start having fair criticisms of the recruitment in the summer over not signing a proper replacement for Sonny out there. But look, I don't think we should be too negative. First of all, they've come back. They've got a result, even if they didn't really deserve it. They've still managed to dig one out here, just like they did at Wolves. I think Frank spoke about it a few weeks ago where he said Bournemouth was a terrible performance. What we want to do is not have any of those again. But we know we'll have games when it's not going to go so well. Make sure we don't lose. Now, you could argue that tonight wasn't far off Bournemouth. I mean, Bournemouth really blew Spurs away that day. It should have been 3 or 4-0. But they're a much better team than Bodo Glimt, in my opinion. And so there is a sort of similarity in terms of level of Spurs performance today. But ultimately, they didn't lose. So that is an improvement. And the other thing that he keeps reiterating, which I do think has validity, is these attacking players are all pretty new. You've got Kudus literally new, Xavi Simons is literally new, Richarlison has not played enough in the last few years. They're all
He's not
adapting to
new.
a new, but he hasn't played.
Same old.
Yeah, and then they're all adapting to a new manager, and I think not that I'm not a football manager, but it does seem generally it seems a bit easier to put in place a defensive tactical structure rather than the creative side of it. That normally takes a bit longer to click. But I do go back to my original point when I was mentioning the sort of slight vibes of that Conte season. I do worry that as the season starts to wear on and we keep having this hellish fixture list, which is just the way of things now, with the extra games in what was the Europa League last year, but now the Champions League going to January, relentless fixtures. It's just going to be quite hard to really bring in that sort of structure. But if you could say to me, look, this is the early days and it's going to start getting much better going forward, then it's been a really solid start. But there's no guarantee that it's going to start clicking when you have no time to turn it around and really work on the training pitch in between. So I've just said, let's not be too negative, but that's my worry, I suppose, on how Spurs are going to develop in the next few months.
Well, listen, let's hope that at least we can go to Leeds on Saturday, get a result, and all go into the next international break not feeling miserable. You, Tom, need to go to the library at Bodo, and get Tom Allnut out of it. I mean, he's a very well-read individual, but poor that he's chosen the library ahead of this podcast. And George, well, actually, predictions from both of you guys. Tom, you go first, because otherwise we'll all nick George's prediction. He's very good at them. What's happening at Elland Road on Saturday?
I'm normally quite optimistic and quite, glass half full, generally go for a Tottenham win. I'm not just trying to be a crowd pleaser. I just feel like they've got good quality, but I think Leeds have started well. I'm not going to go for a defeat, but I'm going to say a 1-1 draw.
I'm going 1-1. George?
It could have been a full house. I feel like I can't now. Just as a side note, and I've got a text message as proof. I did text my cousin this second half saying it'll be 2-2 and everyone will talk about mentality and character. So I'll stick that in the group in a bit.
And what was your Wolves prediction? What was your Wolves prediction, by the way, before you give us this one?
I don't think we did it actually, but it wouldn't have been 1-0. I got it wrong the week before. Doncaster. I think I said 4-1 for Doncaster.
Yeah, it was good. It was good as. Go on, Tom. Sorry,
no, George. While you're mulling it over, I spoke to Mickey van der Ven in the mix zone afterwards for quotes that will be out on. Well, to be honest, by the time people have watched and listened to this, they'll probably be out already. But he mentioned the word mentality 4 or 5 times in my various questions to him. So yeah, I mean, it's probably not a shock that came up quite a lot after a game like that. But yeah.
Well, good old Mickey, the captain Van der Ven as well tonight, which was nice to see. Go on, George. You had enough time to think about it.
I'll go 2-1 Spurs. Let's be positive. Who's going to score?
You don't
Brennan
mean
Johnson.
that. I don't think you mean that, do you?
I don't know. I'm not convinced.
I think you really want to say, not want to say, but I think there's part of you who wants to say 2-1 Leeds, really, based on how things are going. Yeah.
It's sort of true, but no, I'll go Spurs. 2-1 Spurs. I'm going to manifest it happening.
Oh, well, okay. Well, listen, guys, thank you very much. I know we got Tom out of the bar in his hotel, so you need to get back down there and start drinking that ridiculous drink that you posted that you claim to be fermented tea. I don't believe that.
That's what it is. Yeah, it is fermented tea. It's very nice, actually. It is 2:05 here now, though. So
okay. You get to bed. All right, guys. Thank you very much. That is our man on the ground, as it were, in Bodo, Tom Barclay of the Sun. George Sessions, our mystic psycho, who's sort of not sure. Well, he does know, but he doesn't want to say it. Hey, from the Press Association, I'm Marcus Buckland. All roads head to Elland Road on Saturday. As always, come on, you Spurs.